You're listening to the Co-Creator Network. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Hey everybody, this is Maxine Taylor with another edition of Move into the Magic. And I am so thrilled to have as my guest today, Sherry Wilde. Sherry is going to be speaking at the Contact in the Desert Conference at the Joshua Tree Retreat, May 29th through 31st this year, 2015. The reason I am so thrilled to have her as my guest is because Sherry is the real deal. There are many researchers into extraterrestrial communication, there are many experiencers out there, and Sherry is one of them. Sherry Wilde was a wife, a mother, a business owner, living what she felt was an idyllic life. When in 1987, her entire community had an experience, a UFO experience. From that point on, Sherry had no choice. She had to acknowledge that she was not only experiencing contact with extraterrestrial beings, but that this contact had been going on her entire life. And I know that this speaks to the heart of many of you because you too have experienced this. And I know you are so thrilled to hear what my guest has to say. Now, after her initial contacts, it kind of died down, but in 2009, it really kicked in big time. And her memory opened up to past events and teachings that these beings had given her. She's written this in a wonderful book that you can get on Amazon. It's called The Forgotten Promise. And I'm going to tell you how to get in touch with her. Her website is www.theforgottenpromise.net. theforgottenpromise.net. You are going to want to get a copy of this book. I just started reading it online and I couldn't stop. Time prevented me from completing the excerpts that were available on Amazon, but I can assure you that when you get on Amazon.com and you look for this book, you're going to want to get a copy of it. So, without further ado, Sherry Wilde, welcome to Move into the Magic.
Hi, Maxine. Thank you. That's quite an introduction. Thank you.
Well, you are so welcome, dear new friend. First of all, that little introduction, I know, didn't even begin to tell the story. I'd love it if you would tell this story in your own words.
Yes. Well, I'll try to keep it. We have an hour, so I'll keep it as brief as I can.
No, you say whatever you want, honey.
Well, I'll talk about the early stages of what it felt like, because I know that there's a lot of people, I get emails every day from people who are dealing with what I was going through back in 87, 88. The UFO flap occurred in 87, and it took a long time for the Center for UFO Studies Don Schmidt was the co-director then, took them a long time to convince me to undergo hypnosis with them. I thought that the idea of alien abductions was the most ridiculous thing I had ever heard of. I laughed about it when they told me that, that was something that could have occurred that day, but they would help me to find out the truth of what happened to me, because I was seeking answers for 2 hours of missing time that had occurred when I was 17. And I just wanted to use the center to get to a good hypnotist. I didn't buy into this thing that they called alien abductions at all. It just was absurd. And I remember looking at Don Schmidt and thinking, boy, he really looks intelligent. He's got a college education. He seems like he should know better. There must be some flaw in his psychological makeup that he would believe and work in a field that was so outrageous and ridiculous. That's how much of a skeptic and a non-believer I was. So he told me, we're not going looking for an alien abduction scenario. We're hoping to find that something very benign happened to you that day, and we'll investigate it thoroughly. And we don't want to just give you the name of a hypnotist, because it's not a good idea to go in and have this regression work done without support. And that's what finally convinced me. And he's just a very compassionate, kind man. So that convinced me to allow them to be involved. So I did go to Chicago under their guidance, and I was regressed by an amazing hypnotist called Stanley Mitchell. And nothing could have prepared me for what happened that day. I was so unprepared to experience what I experienced under regression. I relived the day 20 years, almost 20 years to the day. That's how this stuff works. It's always so interesting. It's all been set up ahead of time, but I had become obsessed with this 2 hours of missing time that happened when I was 17. And here it was 20 years later with this UFO flap in my community, and I end up getting regressed by the Center for UFO Studies. And it turned out that it was, of course, a typical abduction encounter. And I was 38 years old or so at that time, and I had a successful business. I had 2 children, a marriage. Life was working really well for us, finally. We'd worked hard to get to where we were. And this was the equivalent of taking a hand grenade and just tossing it right into my life, and it just blew everything apart. My life changed that day, and I knew it when I walked out of Stanley Mitchell's office. I knew nothing was ever going to be the same again, but I tried with everything I had to discount the memories. I tried to find a flaw in it. I tried to believe it was a fantasy. They had a psychologist there who did an extensive study and an extensive test on me, and that came back. I was very disappointed when that came back showing I was normal. And I cried, and poor Don, he didn't know what to do. He thought it was good news. He said, I just gave you good news. And I said, no, you didn't, because that means I'm sane, which is telling me that this is really happening. I'm supposed to accept that aliens are abducting me. And it wasn't too long after that. I went to my own psychologist. I went to no less than 4. I think I went to 6, 8. I don't know how many. I just trudged from one to the next, trying to find one to give me a diagnosis to say I had a mental illness, because then I could fix it. And then I could go back to living my life, you see. This, saying that ETs had come into my life and kidnapped me, was just ridiculous beyond belief. But what pushed me over the edge was then the flap continued in our community. It was very much a hotbed of activity for a long period of time. And in my life, they were coming at that time, because once I opened the door to my memories, I started to be aware of other memories that they just came like flooding into my life. They were like big, like flashes, like you see in the movie. And I would have flashes. Oh my gosh, that's what happened when I had that experience. And oh, that's what happened. And I got, all of this coming at me, one after the other after the other. And I realized I had had hundreds of these encounters. And then the worst thing of all, I thought happened when I realized they were coming for me in real time. And in 1988, 89, 90, they were around, and they were coming often, 3 or 4 times a week. They came pretty much every Friday night like clockwork. And I knew when they were coming. You can feel them. Your hair stands up on the back of your neck. And I started to feel them like at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I would start to get very anxious, like on a Friday. And there was more than one time when I would just get in my car and just drive, and like a crazy woman, and not knowing where I could go. And my husband always had to work late on Friday nights. He never got home till 2 or 3 in the morning because of his business. And that was the perfect time for them to come for me. And I remember standing out on my balcony of my bedroom and shouting out into the woods out behind my house and saying, I know you're out there and you're cowards, show yourselves to me. It's in the book. They responded to me. They always responded. I didn't know at the time I had that much power to actually be able to communicate with them. It was quite a journey. When things got worse, my husband left me. He couldn't deal with it. And he couldn't keep me safe. And we found out that our daughter was involved. And that pushed me over the edge. It was one thing to have it happening to me, to go and find your daughter's bed empty in the middle of the night and know that that's where she was. And by that time, I was communicating with them, and they showed me that they had her, and they said it was fine, and they were bringing her back soon. And that was it for me. I tried to kill myself soon after that, because I thought that if I could take myself out of the equation, I thought that I was like the lightning rod bringing them to my house, And I was so distraught over all this. I couldn't wrap my mind around it, So the book is about the journey that I went on, from the fear, the anger, the disbelief, the bargaining, all the things that you do when this is happening to you, and brings me all the way up to present, when they came back in 2009 and showed up in my bedroom, and my guys were in there, and I woke up and I very calmly looked at him and I said, "Holy crap, what are you doing back here?" And he said, "Well, what do you mean, what are we doing back here? We told you about the earth changes that were going to be happening, and we're in the midst of that now, and there's work to be done." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Does that mean that humanity made it?" Because in 89, 90, when they told me about what they call the great earth changes, they told me a little bit about it. It didn't look like humanity was going to evolve, awaken enough to the point where they would be able to go with Gaia into the fifth dimension. And so I had a great conversation with him that night in my bedroom. It was all pretty much fairly conscious. And he basically downloaded a bunch of things into my mind and showed me things. And it was amazing. It was just the most amazing thing. And the recession hit right at that time, had just hit, and I had no work to do. My real estate business just literally shut down overnight. I mean, it just stopped. My agents, took off for the hills, all found different jobs. My bank went under, and I went bankrupt because the bank went under, and they took me down. And I went off to the desert, and without any kind of planning on my part, I started writing this book. It just came out of me. And they dictated it. Every day I was anxious to get out. At first I fought it, and I said, "No, I'm not writing this. I'm not going to tell the story." And he said, "Yes, you will." And I just got up every day, and I would sit for 4, 6, 8 hours at the table and down there in Arizona. And the book would just come out, and I would literally, at the end of the day, I'd go back and read it, and I'd be like, so that's what that happened. And I'd had other people want to write about my experiences, and they went so far as to interview me and try to get it organized, but it was overwhelming to try to put this all in sequence and try to make it make sense, because there's so many encounters and so many different timelines and different stories, and it was difficult to do. But the way they brought it through me, it turned out pretty easy to track if you don't set the book down for very long. Most people tend to just read straight through it, they tell me, because it's an easy book to read, and that's the best way to do it is just read it in 1 or 2 or 3 sittings, But I went from being a fear-based, terrified victim to being aware that I was an active participant in a program that is happening on this planet, along with millions of other volunteers who came here to assist humanity and Gaia into going into the fifth dimension. And that might sound grandiose to some people, but I can assure you it's not. We all have a purpose for being here, and there's nothing special about any of us who are volunteers at all. We came out of our deep love for Gaia and for our huge respect and admiration for humanity who's been stuck on this prison planet for so long, captured in a game of reincarnation and karma. And so I talk, and that's what I do. And people I always give a disclosure, and I say, this is my story. I don't have proof. I've been given the opportunity to take pictures, and for some reason, I don't think that's important. I just don't do that, because my guys have given me the opportunity to do that. They've certainly shown themselves to me enough, and they laugh because I don't take pictures. And then every now and then I go back and I say, well, I changed my mind. Maybe for the book it would be good. And then they're like, well, we don't think you will, but okay. So, but I don't have any proof. I don't have nuts and bolts for the investigators. All I've got is what I know to be my truth. And I tell people, run it through your heart. If it doesn't resonate with you, that's fine. If it does, if anything in there is of value to you, then just take that and use it. But I speak for people who are still fearful about what's happening to them, and there are a lot of them. So it's now 2015, and we're deep into the Ascension process, and I am sad that humanity is not awakening as much as we had hoped. We didn't get the numbers we were hoping for, but there's still time, and it's going to be what it's going to be. And what my guys have told me is that you don't have to worry. I mean, everyone will make it eventually. It's not possible for anyone not to make it back home. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell.
Sherry, it's absolutely captivating. Absolutely captivating. I have thousands of questions, and I have to ask questions on behalf of the audience who is not here with us. So just bear with me as I ask you, when they showed you that your daughter was safe, how did they show you that?
They communicate with me. At that time, they were communicating with me in 3 different ways. I would hear, I call him D.A., the main guy that I interact with. And he talks to me in 3 different ways. I hear him audibly, as if he's standing behind my right shoulder. And he's as if he's standing there, and I turn around to look to see if he's there. And then they communicate with me. He has like what I call the pipeline, which I really like that way. It's like something opens up at the top of my head, and there's like a pipe, and he's talking down through it into my head. And then the other way he communicates is with, he does what I call an impression, and I hear him in my head, but it's not my thoughts, because it's a distinctly different voice energy that's in my head. So when I cried out for my daughter and I said, "Where is my daughter? You better not have my daughter," because I had just gotten back from being on the ship with them, and I was not supposed to wake up. But something in me knew that she was there. I'd seen her on the ship, I'm sure, but they put me back to bed first, and I came awake a little bit, and then I was just like I was under anesthesia, and I forced myself awake, and I knew she was gone, and it was like trying to move out of concrete. I forced myself out of bed, and once I got moving, then I was good. I went downstairs and I checked your bedroom, and sure enough, her bed was folded back very neatly. That's what they do. They always leave it nice and neat. And my daughter was 17. She certainly wouldn't have. And it was, 2 or 3 in the morning, and the only other thing would have been if she was snuck off the window or something, but very unlikely. And so I just raged, and I said, "Do you have my daughter? Where is she? Do you have my daughter?" And he said, "Yes, we do." And I heard him speak through the pipeline. And I said, "Bring her back immediately. Bring her back. Don't you touch her. Just bring her back." And he said, "That's not possible." And I said, "Bring her back." I said, "Is she safe? What are you doing to her?" And he showed me, and they do this all the time, and I love it. It's so cool. They showed me, they run like a movie in my mind, and I see it. I just watch it, not with my eyes, but I'm watching it. It feels like it's with me. You would think that it's like right in front of my eyes, but it's not. I know it's not in front of my eyes, but it's in my head is how I interpret it anyway, because I know a little screen doesn't drop down in front of my head, because they've done it already while I'm driving, and I watched this little movie, and it's in my head, and they showed me her, and in all honesty, I didn't like what I saw. She was laying like in a heap up against the wall. She was just laying there in her pajamas, unconscious or asleep or something. She wasn't hurt or anything, but I just didn't like it. She was laying like on the floor on the ship. I recognized the area of the ship. And he said, "She's next to be brought back. You don't need to worry." And I said, you leave your hands off of her. You do not touch her. You do not take her. And he said, that's not possible. And I said, anything. You can do anything to me that you want. You can have anything, but you can't touch my children. Please don't take her. And he said, that's not possible. We have a contract. And I said, please, please. And I bargained, I begged, everything, because that was back when I was still in fear of what was going on and didn't understand. And finally, I just was so spent from it, and he just wouldn't budge. He was, they're very businesslike. And he said, it's not possible, Sherry. It's not possible. You understand that it's not possible. That, this has to happen. This is a contract. And I said, I said, then you know what? You have to block her. I don't want her going through what I'm going through. I said, she had already been starting to talk to me about partial memories and about certain things that had happened to her. She was having missing time. She was noticing the bruises on her arms and on her backside, and she was very alarmed by it. And I said, block her to the point where she doesn't have any inkling of what's going on with her. And they did, because it wasn't very long after that her and I were sitting out on the back deck. Early one morning, she came out, stumbling out, all sleepy-eyed, sat down next to me and started talking to me. And as she was talking to me, I saw the finger bruises on her I had those on me constantly that summer, and they were on her forearms where they had carried her, and she was talking to me, and I noticed them, and I just was sick. My stomach just lurched, and I noticed her as she talked. She was stretching her arms and rubbing her arms, and she looked down and she saw them, and I thought, oh no, and she looked at that and she goes, what's that? And then she looked at the other one and she goes, look at that. She said, that's weird. And then she went back to her story. And she didn't know what it was. And so she was blocked. And so she has since opted out of the program. I don't know how she did that, but Dot told me in 2009 that she had opted out of the program and was no longer participating. I do not have communication with that daughter at all anymore.
You don't?
No, for 5 years I have not seen her. She left my life some years back.
Fascinating.
Yeah, sad. Very sad.
Very sad. It is very sad. And I'm not going to ask you questions about that because that's personal.
Yeah, I won't answer.
Right. I wouldn't even think of it. Thank you for sharing it, though. Let me go back to something you mentioned, and you talk about a contract. What kind of contract? What are they talking about?
Well, I didn't know at that time. I learned in 2010, I think it was, after I'd written the book, and I had all this amazing stuff and synchronicities. My life was just so amazing at that time. When they're active in your life is just, it's magical. And there came a point where, after the book was written and I was told it had to be published, and I fought them and I said, no, I'm not going public with this. And they said, yes, you will. And then Archangel Gabriel intervened and requested that I have the book, that the book was meant to be published. I mean, they pulled out some big guns for me. And so at some point I was out walking in the desert one day, and I was amazed at everything that was happening in my life, but I had thousands of questions. I was very confused. And as I walked along, I felt the connection. They're always with me. They're always watching me, and I knew that. So I just said, tell me why you've been so involved in my life. Why have I almost lived like a double life? I'm there with you, but I'm also here. I'm living with one foot in each reality. I knew that. A part of me is with them all the time, and I have that awareness. And I said, why? Why are you come for me so often? So sometimes more than once a day. And why am I with you so much? Why has it been so much? And they suddenly was one of those movies again, and they pulled back a curtain and I saw myself as I was before I came here. And I saw who I was, and I was this, I was like I want to say a 6.2 or 6.3 vibrational being. I was not in form. And I was just in a state of timelessness. And I had this wonderful existence of oneness. And there was a request that came that went out that we all were aware of from Gaia for assistance to aid her children. And that she had made a decision to move on to planet Earth. And I had the sense that this was in linear time. It was in 1947, linear time on Earth. And there had been a plan, a decision to try to do what could be done. You can't intervene on another planet or with a race's development or evolvement. They have to figure it out on their own. But because of the types of manipulation and control that had gone on planet Earth, there was a request from the council that there be an allowance made that the souls who were willing to would come in as humans, step down their vibration and come onto the planet as humans, go behind the veil and do our best to help awaken humanity. And I knew I had to go. I had to. And my guys fought me on it, and they said, you don't need to go. That's not the place for you to go. You don't want to go there. And I said, yes, I do. And I went into like a training period for it because I had never been informed before. And I had never been in duality or seen evil, what you would call evil, or, the polarity. And so I went into training for it, and I saw myself choose the date I was born on. I chose December 25th, 1950. I chose because it gave me the attributes and the gifts that I needed to deal with life. And I also did it to honor my wonderful friend, Joshua, Jesus, who had come here before to try to awaken humanity. So I saw all that, and I saw myself telling Da before I came here, don't you dare let me fall too far into the illusion. Don't let me fall too far asleep. Stay in constant contact with me. Make sure that I'm okay, and I don't want to lose you. You're my lifeline. Remind me as much as allowed to remind me of who I am. They couldn't tell me why I was here. They couldn't tell me, oh, you're on a mission along with millions of others, but they could certainly take me on the ship and show me the planet being destroyed if we continued on our way. They could show me that we are one with our Creator, and that the way that we're living our life down here is not the way we are meant or we were created to live. So that's the sort of things that they did with me. And they stayed in constant contact with me. And so it explained a lot. And I was very grateful that they showed me that. So it changed everything. So I refer to myself now as not an abductee. I refer to myself, and actually all abductees, as volunteers. And that's even for the people who, even those who are, I know I've been subjected to military abductions myself, because when they find out that you're involved in this program, they step in and try to frighten you and try to mess with you. And I've had visits from the men in black, and I've been threatened and I've been messed with. But you can't be a victim unless you agree to it. And you have to allow it. It's energy. It's just energy, and you have to keep your vibration high. And sometimes that's difficult, and sometimes you can get targeted. But overall, you just use it to your advantage, and you laugh at it, and you say, here I am. I'm going to keep talking. And so I speak for those who are not yet ready to, or those who are still afraid, or who still believe they're victims. But the problem, if I might say this, it's the whole problem with this planet, is the belief everybody believes they're a victim, for the most part. And I shouldn't say everybody, but it's a planet of people playing the role of victim, and that has to stop. That's all that it's going to take to change the planet. Stop being a victim. Stop believing you're a victim. Realize the truth of who you are. And as soon as you do that, everything will change. So I kind of over answered your question. I do tend to ramble sometimes.
Darling, that was not rambling. That was magnificent.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Maxine.
I mean, needless to say, I am totally on the same page and
Yes.
totally supportive of this incredible work that you're doing. I'm so grateful for your being here and sharing this with all of our audience.
Yeah.
So, oh gosh, now I've got to kind of pull in my left brain a little bit and start asking intelligible questions because you know what, when I'm interviewing somebody and I'm at the same frequency they are, I get lost in it. And so forgive me now. Let me just kind of tone it down. Well, okay, I know what I want to ask you. I want to ask you the title of your book, The Forgotten Promise. What is the forgotten promise?
I know. The book was going to be called something entirely different. When my guys dictated it to me or brought it through me, it was called The 3 Important Things to Know. But Dolores Cannon, who I ended up having her be the publisher, she didn't like that title. And I had to admit I didn't like it much either, but it's the one that was given to me. And she was coming up with another title. And we were getting ready to go to press with it. And I spent Mother's Day, I think that would be, I don't know, what would that be, 3 years ago now or so, 2 years ago, Mother's Day with my youngest daughter. We had a tenuous relationship. And we went hiking for the day and a picnic or something, and had a lovely day with her. I was happy because it had been, since my oldest daughter had left my life, things with my youngest daughter were a little bit difficult, challenging, but we were trying to work our way through it. And that day when we were hiking, I told her about my book. And I had to tell her because I knew it was going to be coming out soon. And she reacted. I didn't expect it, although I suppose I should have maybe. But she said, don't you dare let that book be published. That's our private story. You told us never to talk about that stuff. And now here you are writing a book, and you better not have that book published. If you publish that book, I will never speak to you again. And I knew she meant it because it had been rocky. You know, she'd been kind of in and out anyway. And I came home, and I was just, after we'd had such a nice time, I was just devastated. And I came home, and my significant other was here, and I told him, I said, I'm going to pull the plug on the book. And he said, no, you can't mean that. And I said, I can't risk losing my daughter. I can't risk losing her too. And I said, you know, I'm sorry, but nothing is worth that. And he said, well, can you? And I said, if I talk to Dolores, I think she'll understand. She's a mother. And he said, well, in his wisdom, my Jim, he said, why don't you go to bed and sleep on it? He said, I'll leave. I'll go back to my apartment, and you stay here and you think about it and sleep on it, and we'll talk in the morning. And I said, okay. I went to bed that night, and I was pretty sure I had made up my mind that's what I was going to do. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, it's too bad you can't see me because I'm holding on my lap my little dog. I mentioned him in my book a few times. I have a little 9-pound Maltese, and he's my constant companion. He was sleeping in bed with me, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, my electricity in the house, as it sometimes does when they come, it buzzes and everything electrical goes out, and sometimes the lights flash on and then go out, or sometimes it's light from the ships. But anyway, everything happened at once. You know, I was sleeping soundly, but my guys showed up, and they did it with a lot of. Well, actually, you know what it was is that was when he left, and it was this whole flashing and all this stuff happening, and the flash of light, and I sat up in bed, and I started to laugh because I knew it was them. I saw the light coming in, the bright light coming in through my window, and I saw it, you know, go as they left quickly. And I said, how about that? You know, my guys were just here, and Pookie was going crazy. He jumped off the bed and started barking. And then I remembered the conversation I had with him. It was right there. And he said to me, Sherry, have you forgotten the promise you made?
Ah.
Yeah. And I said, no, I haven't forgotten it. And he said, you took a vow. And I said, I did. And he said, yes. And he said, you know, I understand. And I said, do you? I said, do you know what it's like? And I went into this pity story. And he said, let me show you what it would be. If you acquiesce to your daughter's demands, she will lose respect for you ultimately. And he said, and he kind of showed me, and he explained to me why my oldest daughter on an energetic level is not speaking to me. Doesn't matter what the story is.
Right.
And he said, you know, you need to be strong. He said, you need to do this. You have to make a decision based on the good for the greater good, rather than looking at this from that smaller perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he had to say. He comes in and he says what he has to say, and very precisely, and he leaves. And so I changed my mind and got the title for my book, The Forgotten Promise. So that's how it went. Yeah.
Oh, Sherry, what an incredible story.
I know, it's cool, isn't it, though? Whenever I have interaction with my guys, I mean, it's never just boring. That's why I told somebody the other night, I was doing an interview and I was on live TV and I didn't mean to, but I said, you can't make this leap up. I said, you know, I could never make this up in a million years. You know, if you don't believe me, I'm sorry, but I mean, I don't have the imagination to make this stuff up.
Oh, it's amazing. Now, of course, I want to ask you about some of the things that are in your book, and as well as what you're going to be talking about in your workshop at the Contact in the Desert conference. One of the things that I saw when I went to the website, the Contact in the Desert website, was a kind of a bunch of bullet points on what you're going to talk about, and one of them, well, two of them, absolutely blew me away, and I'm going to ask you about the first one first, and that is, how can we jump timelines?
Yeah, I thought that might be it. Yeah.
We've only known each other a few moments, and you know me. Go ahead, dear.
A lot of people are intrigued by that, and I love to jump. I love to jump timelines. We all can do it. We just don't know we can do it. But once you realize you can do it, it's a powerful tool, especially during these times of ascension. So I like to jump timelines to bring about a higher outcome on events, and to raise your vibration. And so I have a meditation that I was given or came up with, I'm not sure, and it's kind of a visualization that I do, and I guess I would call it an exercise, and I find it very powerful. I've used it at times, and these are personal stories that concern close family, friends, and that's why I won't tell them, but I've used jumping timelines to be a source of healing, and to just in so many ways provide us with a higher answer, a higher frequency. And it's not difficult to do, because we exist on multiple, that was one of the three important things that they taught me. The second most important thing is we are multidimensional beings existing on more than one level simultaneously. And forever, when I was really little and they were teaching me that, I had no idea, but they would make me say it back to them, and then they would give me examples over and over, different kinds of examples, to try to show me what it meant. That was a tough one for me until I got to be an adult. And even then, I'd say, why is that so important to know? But now, during this time of ascension, it's very important to know, because we have scattered ourselves amongst all these different dimensions, and we've left pieces of ourselves out of fear or neglect or whatever. And we need to bring our soul back into alignment. And so there are all these different timelines available to us, and we choose every moment of every day, every second, millions of times a day. You choose your next experience based on your frequency, and that's basically your timeline. It's basically a dimensional thing. So you're having an experience, and you can choose how you're going to perceive that experience, and you can choose it from a high perspective or a lower victim mentality or one of fear. And how you choose to respond to this situation affects the outcome of it. So if you respond with love, which if everyone could just respond with love to everything, we'd be to the 5th, 6th, or 7th dimension in a heartbeat. So that's basically what jumping timelines is to choose to raise your frequency, choose to move into a higher timeline, a higher dimension, and to bring with you those aspects behind you that are left in, that are scattered about in lower frequencies, pieces of you that you lost due to fear or whatever, because we're energy, and so we leave these little bundles of energy sometimes scattered about. And so I like to invite in those pieces of myself that have, stayed on lower timelines or are experiencing lower timelines. And then I look to a higher frequency and I ask myself that's residing on that frequency if I can come there and bring along with me these other parts of myself. And so I'm integrating myself is what I'm doing. I'm integrating all aspects of myself in readiness to return to oneness. So that's what that's about.
Oh, thank you for that. Thank you so much. Let me ask you this, Sherry. How does this tie into the matrix? And what is your definition of the matrix?
Well, I think the matrix is the illusionary world, is the way that I look at it. It's the world that we think we see.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the one we've all agreed upon sharing the hologram, with. So we're all here. We are at truth. We're energy, and we're all having this experience of living on this planet, and we're having individual bodies, and we live in houses, and we eat food, and that's all hologram. That's all pretend. But because we all share the one mind, we agree on it, and we agree to have the experience, and we'll continue to have it because that's our frequency. Because that's the frequency that we're residing at now. That's why all of it will start to fall away as we raise our vibration. People ask a lot of times, what are we going to do about planet Earth? The contamination, the chemtrails, the GMO, all the terrible things we did to planet Earth. And I say it's an illusion. It's not real. It's not really there. It won't be there. You raise your vibration, it's gone. Gaia has already moved on. She's there into the 5th dimension. We just need to continue to work to raise our vibration and stop creating this world full of all this stuff. But it's stuff that needs to be looked at, healed, and we need to look at it with love instead of fear.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
100%. So time and space, that's an illusion.
Right.
So what's really going on?
What's really going on?
Uh-huh.
Well, our creators set this up ahead of time so that there would be this opening, this time for planet Earth to move back into the light. We always had the option of doing it at any time that we wanted to. And as a matter of fact, there's a timeline. It's pretty interesting. I was with a spiritual friend of mine not too long ago. She's an amazing person. And she's aware of all dimensions, and she knows everything. She does not have a veil when she came in. And she told me one of her favorite places to go is to visit herself in the dimension where planet Earth went into the 5th dimension in the 1960s and early 70s. They made the transition. And I said, really? And she said, you would not believe how wonderful that world is. And I'm sure what it was if you lived in the early 60s, I did certainly, and there was that time in the early 60s when there was innocence on the planet, and President Kennedy was in office, and there was this hope. You felt this. I felt it as a child. I felt this hope. I felt this sense that something great was about to happen, and it was going to be wonderful. And it did on that timeline. On our timeline, he was killed. Martin Luther King was killed, and so in the assassinations. the war, Vietnam, everything changed. And his plan, he knew, and he had plans. He was going to reveal to the population that we weren't alone in the universe. That would have changed everything. He was going to change our currency from gold back to silver back. That would undo the cabal's hold on our banking system and our finances. It would have changed everything. And I'm sure that that's what happened, back in the day. But we have that ability now. But this is kind of like the backup plan. This is kind of like our because Gaia is moving on. There won't be a third dimensional planet anymore. So those who are not going with her, those three-dimensional beings who are resonating and still wanting to experience duality, will go to another planet where they will continue on their journey. And when they get their fill of it, they'll have their opportunity to move into the fourth and fifth dimension also. But for those of us who came as volunteers and those of us who are awakening, we have this great thing that's going to be happening soon. We will be moving through a stargate and going into the higher frequencies. So
thrilling.
Yeah.
Thrilling. And that leads me to another question. So many of us, I know you're one of them, of course, obviously. So many of us are looking for our own kind, because as we gather together at the same frequency, the power increases, the love increases, the light increases, the ascension increases. And I'm not asking you to pull out a crystal ball, but I really am, Sherry. Can you share with us anything about what you have been told about what we are in the process of creating now? And I know it's up to us. I realize that. Have you been given any information that you'd like to share with us about, for lack of a better term, in linear time, the future?
I know, it's the great question, and it's the one that I also have that question. And if I'm aware of it, it's on a level that I can't access. I know that in November of 2011, I had a meeting on the ship with a lot of different races were represented there, and they picked me up. It was just an amazing day because the ship came up the valley, and I watched it, and and I thought I was leaving. I thought they were coming to pick me up, and I was going to leave for good, actually, because I thought my work was done. But I was very saddened that day. We had a meeting, and all I remember from it is the talk about the cabal, the controllers. The word hijack was used, trying to hijack humanity's awakening, and they were fighting us more than what we had anticipated, because it's inevitable. And yet there are souls who are choosing to not awaken. They're choosing to buy into the fear, and they are unleashing all of the horrible distractions and fearful events on humanity. And the typical person out on the street does not look at it and go, what a joke. That's just, it's a lie, and it's not even real. And I'm choosing not to believe that. So it's had an effect. There's no doubt it's had an effect, and it made me very, very sad. I don't get depressed, but I was very sad about it for the longest time. And so it is in humanity's hands. Everyone will experience that's what it comes down to. Everyone needs to be responsible for their own frequency, their own awakening, and it helps the overall, of course, because of oneness. It helps everyone if you can raise your vibration as high as you possibly can and remember the truth of who you are. I think talking about it, people are afraid to say the word ascension out in public, and they're afraid to, you just have to be fearless, and you can't be afraid someone's going to laugh at you. This is important. People's higher selves, their oversoul wants them to wake up, and they have to, it's up to us to give them that opportunity if we can. And you can't worry about being labeled an idiot or whatever, or a conspiracy freak or whatever. I don't care. we need to do what we need to do. It's important. Time is critical. We've only got a few more years before that time, that Stargate closes, basically. And that's my understanding anyway. I mean, evolving is a soul's ongoing process, definitely. But there is this time right now where there is this great alignment that's taking place, which is a physical alignment, which is the physical manifestation of what's happening on an energetic level for us. And to take advantage of this at this time that's why I came here, to experience this as well as just be a volunteer. It's an amazing thing to experience, and you want to make the most of it. You can't be worried about, you can't even really be worried about making a living. You can't be worried about your job. You should not be worried about anything. The universe will support you if you just decide that your priority is to awaken and to get to know your creator and to know your higher self and start opening that communication. Go within and start that dialogue and discover the truth of who you are. There's no timeline. My guys, they don't deal with time. They didn't tell me anything. That's what I can recall. Not that I know anyway. So I know there's some out there who are saying September of this year is going to be the first batch, a third of the planet is going to ascend. I don't know. Some say it's going to take decades. Others say no, in the blink of an eye. I personally think it certainly could be in the blink of an eye if we can just get the frequency there.
Probably if enough of us.
Yes.
I forget, what is the percentage, 17%, or if 17% of the population were aware and awakened, that's all it would take.
Yeah, my understanding is that it helps to have more people, but it's more of if you can individually get your vibration high, because there are those, the higher you go, it pulls everyone else. And so it's more a matter of reading the light on the planet, kind of a thing. But I don't know how you reach those who they don't have a clue that they're unconscious, and they don't have any idea that any of this is even happening. And they're the ones, how do you reach them? And it's not our job to try to save anybody at this point. It just isn't. But you can't help but feel compassion for everyone who's on this planet, and especially those who have had obstacle after obstacle thrown in front of them and have been messed with a lot. It's not right, So.
Well, I agree with you. I have quit trying to break through to people who I know are closed. You can feel it when they are. All I think we can do is just put out the word, like I do on this show.
Yes, exactly. What you're doing is exactly the right thing, and that's what I mean. You just put it out there, and if it resonates, they'll if they're ready, they'll grab onto it. If they're ready. Oh
yes, and there are so many. At least in my line of work, there are so many who are. Because my clients, law of attraction brings to you a wonderful mirror. Mm-hmm. And if it's a wonderful gauge, you can take your temperature, your spiritual temperature anytime you want, just by looking at the people who are in your life and how you feel when you're with them.
Exactly. Yes.
And so what I feel right now is incredible gratitude to you for all the work you've done. I feel a wonderful connection with you. I want to invite you to come back and be my guest anytime you would like. I'm sure that there will be many more books, and I want to share all of them with our audience. And for those of you, again, who would like to get in touch with Sherry, you can just go to her website, theforgottenpromise.net. theforgottenpromise.net. Get a copy of her book. Many of us have been researchers, have been experiencers, perhaps. Hear it again for the first time. See if it doesn't raise your vibration. Sherry, again, thank you, thank you, thank you for sharing all of your experiences, and I look forward to our next interview.
I do too. Maybe I'll get my video working. Thank you, Maxine.
You're so welcome. And to all of you out there, I hope you have enjoyed my guest, Sherry Wilde, and I hope that you'll join me next time when once again we move into the magic together. Until then, this is Maxine Taylor saying, remember, when you change the